Guys, welcome to another episode of A Truth Bump. So we are picking up again where we left off last week, like we always do. But today's conversation, I'm going to start leaning on to something that is a big part of everything that we've spoken about. And I guess it becomes a huge piece of the puzzle when you start to fit this into your understanding of the work so far. And that is the word space. So that's what we're going to be talking about today in this Truth Bump module. It's all about space. So get right into it. What is space? I mean, I've been talking about space in all the work, and sometimes I refer to it as the emptiness. We have covered that the ego or the identity views the emptiness as a void, as though there's something missing, something's not complete, and very different view for the ego. But the space is actually, if you look at it, it is the completeness of who we are. The space is infinity. The space is the real love. The space is the universe, if you like. So it's just to give you a few reference points of the word space. But now these it's sometimes that some of this goes over our head. So what we really need to do is just to build some reference points here about space. But probably the easiest one is it's a reference point in your own language that you've used commonly. And that is when something is taking up space from you, you usually say that word, you go, I just need some space. Maybe it's a relationship you're in or a friendship. Maybe it's work related. And you're doing something and it's kind of feels like you're choking. I mean, when I say choking, it's like it's strangling you and you want to take some space from it. And you say that. You say, I just need some space. And what do you do when you actually take space? Well, what you do is actually move away from the very thing that is taking or consuming space from you, and you go and sit usually by yourself, usually doing nothing really. It's not like you're trying to consume yourself with something else. What you do is you usually go sit in nature. Maybe you sit by yourself and you ponder and you reflect, or maybe you meditate and you just take some space for yourself by yourself. Isn't it interesting that we do that naturally? It's kind of like innate in us as human beings. So when I use this word space, some people are like, "What's space? What's he talking about?" Well, what are you talking about when you say, "Hey, man, I just need some space"? What are you talking about? And what are you doing when you're actually moving away from the very thing that is consuming space from you? That means it's taking space away from you. What is that? What is that all about? And what do you do when you sit by yourself and you sit with nature, or just by yourself and you sit in the nothingness, in the emptiness, in the moment, if you like? What are you doing? So right there is something that I find is innate. It's like it's built into us. It's like we kind of know how to do it naturally. And so maybe you can refer to your own capabilities of doing what it is that you're doing so naturally. So surely you've said that before, where you said, "Hey, I just need space from this," or maybe you're the space consumer, and someone said it to you once, maybe where they said to you, "I just need some space from you." So. And like I said, it's not always around relationships. It could be something that's work related. It could be something you've been practicing and you're trying to master, and that practice it's become time consuming and it's become space consuming, and you need to take a break from it. As a flight instructor, when I take people up to teach people how to do aerobatics, sometimes when we're practicing something over and over again, they could get to a point where you, as an instructor, you just need to, call it off. It's not the day today, and let them go back, land, and let them reflect on it. Like, take some space away from the actual lesson and be by themselves for a bit. And then they come back, a week later or the lesson later, and it's just like it's there, and they pick it up. So, it's so this can be about many things, this idea of space. But what does it feel like when you do have space? That's probably a good question for us to start at. And then maybe we can look at, what does it feel like when something is consuming space from you? But ideally, when you have space, it's joyous. What for me, it's like your capacity to experience the present moment becomes greater. It's really reflected or dependent on your the ability or the space that you do have. So in other words, the more space that you have, the more your ability to experience the now. And the more the more deeper your experience of the now, the more joyful that is, and then the more effortless things become. Because as you're deeper in the now, especially when you begin to take action and move forward from the now, then that's when you create this ability to find yourself in a flow state. So, it's having that space. It opens up the doors of your creativity. It opens your doors of your ability to be in the now, your ability to love, your ability to receive love. It opens all those doors. So your ability to see the next few steps ahead. Like, sometimes that, again, that's a description of being in a flow state. You're in the moment, but you can kind of see what's happening. You can see the next few steps ahead of you. And that's what makes the flow state so effortless, because it's like, it's like your intuition or the feeling is just, it's showing you the next step. It's showing you what's, so as you can see the next step, there's less thinking involved. And when there's less thinking involved, of course, it becomes effortless. So look, space has so much to do with all that. And look, if I to just describe what it feels like when you have more space, it's just freedom. You feel the freedom to, not worry. You're not consumed by, what could have been, what was, what someone else is going to think about what you're doing or who you are. Like, none of that is of your concern when you have space. Now, on the flip side of that, when you don't have space, because obviously something has consumed it. And we can talk about what consumes space in a moment. But when you don't have space, it's like everything gets sucked in to not a focal point, but it's a limited point. Because when you have space and you're in a flow state, everything gets sucked into a focal point. Like, it's like you can see the next few steps. You can see what's unfolding. But this is very different. It's not a focal point. It's when everything gets shattered, if you like, and there's no connection to, your greater self, your ability to see the next few steps, your ability to connect and feel yourself. And in that moment, everything's very, very frightening, because it becomes dark, it becomes uncertain, and you're not comfortable with that level of uncertainty, because the difference is when you do have space, you have comfort within that level of uncertainty. There is a certainty in the uncertain that I always refer to. There is a knowing in the unknown. And the reason why there is a knowing in the unknown or a certainty in the uncertain is because there is space. There is an uncertainty. There is an unknown. There always is. That's how the story unfolds. But if there's space, there's certainty in that. There's a knowing in the unknown. And that's probably the biggest difference when you don't have space. There's still the unknown and there's still the uncertain, but there is no certainty in the uncertain. And that's very frightening, because right there you've lost the extension of who you are. You've lost the expansion of yourself, and you've limited yourself to a drop of the ocean rather than being the drop, as one as the ocean. So that's why it becomes quite frightening, and when you lack space. So that's probably the key thing there. I could probably point out that I think we'll drop in is that's it. It's like there's always within your story, there always is a level of uncertainty. That's the life. That's the movie. If you're going to watch a movie right now, you don't want to know what's going to happen. And in fact, if someone told you what was going to happen, you would shut them up because they're ruining your experience of the movie. Well, it's the same with life. Life is like a movie, and we don't want to know what's unfolding next. But we do want to have certainty in ourselves, certainty in our capabilities, certainty or confidence, if you like, or a knowing in the unknown. That it's and you know what, in a movie, you kind of know as well, like depending on what kind of movie you go watch, but when you go watch the movie, the end is a happy ending, and the guy finds the girl finds the guy, the hero wins, the villain loses. There is a knowing of that. The end story is going to be amazing, and they fall in love, and there's this happy ending. There is a sadness in a movie, depending on again what movie you're watching. But although the end result somewhat, it's about how that story unfolds that we're interested in, that takes us on this ride. But it's the knowing of, at the end of the story, I know what happens at this. Like, it's not like you know what happens, but typically, what the results or the outcome of this movie is, or the outcome of this life is. And that's what it feels like when you have knowing in the unknown, when you have a certainty in the uncertain. You don't know how it's going to happen. You don't know what the twists and the ups and downs are going to be, but at the end of the day, you're going to be okay. At the end of the day, you're going to get through this. And that's very similar to the movie that we watch. And if you think about it, how many times in your life have you ever, gone through some dramas or some difficult times and uncertain times, but if you ever checked in with yourself and not with the story, not with the uncertainty about the story, but if you checked in with yourself, how many times have you gone, I just know this is going to work out? You see, right there, that is a knowing in the unknown. I know this is going to work out. I know I'm going to be okay. How many times have you checked in with yourself and experienced that? I'm sure you've had moments, and plenty of those moments we've actually experienced that. Well, right there is your capacity, your capability of checking in and when you have space around a story, when you have space around a circumstance or that is unfolding, that's when you're finding your certainty in the uncertain. That's when you're finding the knowing in the unknown. So that's probably the biggest difference. I'm trying to give you as many reference points as I can, but the biggest thing that stands out, what I like to highlight right there in what I've said, is that The difference is when you lack space, you you lack the knowing, and the knowing in the unknown, or the certainty in the uncertain. When you have space, the story like I said, there's always going to be twists and turns in a story. And the WTF, in my work, there, I refer to that as, life will always go up and down, but you don't have to. I refer to you being on the edge of the seesaw. When you're on the edge of the seesaw, you move up and down. And that's what life is. Life will move up and down. It will have its troughs, and it has its ins and outs and twists. That's life. That's the movie, right? But as you draw closer to the center of the seesaw, or as you draw closer to yourself, to the real self, what happens to the up and down as you go closer to the seesaw? Well, it becomes less. And ultimately, when you get to the very center of the seesaw, the up and down still continues, because that's what a seesaw does, because that's what life does. It moves up and down. It's what duality does. It's designed to be up and down, right? But you don't move up and down. The story moves up and down, and that's the difference. And so that leads me to, well, how do we find more space? If it's all about finding space in ourselves, finding space in who you are, well, how do we do that? Well, that's in fact the exact work that we're actually doing, isn't it? We're doing the work. As you deepen your connection with yourself, you expand your awareness of the expandedness. I like to refer it to that way because sometimes when I say we're expanding, the truth is you're not expanding, you're already expanded, because the truth is you're not really the drop, you're really the ocean, but you definitely are here to experience yourself as the drop, and you're definitely experiencing yourself as the drop. But as Rumi says, we're not the drop in the ocean, we're the entire ocean in the drop. Now, to experience yourself as being the entire ocean in the drop, well, that's finding yourself right in the middle of it all, right in the middle of the story, right in the middle of yourself. When you find yourself right there, the story will move up and down, but you choose to if you want to. Like sometimes people will go, well, why would you choose to? Or why would you not want to? That's right. It's like the movie. Why would you not want to? You want to move up and down, but it's you're choosing to. Let's give you an example. Most of you know, I like my sports. I'm a rugby league fanatic here in Australia, and my team is the Sydney Roosters. Just in case you were wondering. So when I go to a Sydney Roosters game, well, guess what? I'm going to ride the ups and downs, and I don't want to sit there and just be like, I don't care what happens. Like, I have no attachment here. I have so much space. Like, I'm not affected. I want to be affected. I want to go on the ride. Like, that's what we do. We go on the ride. So that's what I'm saying to you, is that you choose to let yourself go onto this ride. I just took the kids away. We went to a place here in New South Wales. We went away for the Easter weekend to a place called Jamboree. It's a recreation park, and we took the kids for they've got water slides and all kinds of rides, and my son Orlando's 6 and Olivia's 4, and my wife and I, there was one ride that we could take them on, because some of the rides were, she's too short or he's too scared of that, so we found this medium kind of ride that would be not so frightening. So we climbed up this, it was like a python or something. You're basically going and you're sitting as a family in a tube. I thought, this is great. We can do it as a family. We're sitting on this tube, and, there's water going down the tube, and you go down the tube, and, it's not so scary. So we got to the top, it took a climb, we got there, and once we got to the top, Orlando, my son, was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And everyone's waiting, to go on this ride. And I'm like, oh no, you're gonna love it. It's amazing. And and then the other people were waiting. We're like, oh, this is our second go. You're going to love it. It's fantastic. And of course, my wife's like super eager to go onto this ride because we didn't get to go on many other rides with the kids because for whatever reason, different limitations. Livy was too short or whatever, or something were too scary. And this was the perfect ride. So anyway, finally we convinced my son, yep, all right, I'm going to do it. Because my wife and my daughter couldn't go alone because they were too light to get into this thing. So we jump in and they sent us off. And as soon as we went, it was pitch black. My wife and I didn't know it was going to be pitch black because we probably wouldn't have encouraged them to go if it was pitch black. And of course, they're screaming and absolutely crying because it was pitch darkness in there. And, you're on this, big ring going down this big tube and, maneuvering all, within this tube. And we come out to the other end and bang, right, they're crying. And right there, I thought to my wife, I looked at her and I was like, we've just lost their confidence. But honestly, we probably wouldn't have done it if we knew it was going to be pitch dark in there. But we came out of it and we spoke to them and we said, guys, like, and they were chatting and we had to talk about it and they're saying, were you guys scared? And I said, well, no, I wasn't scared. But they were like, but it was all dark in there and like you don't know what's going to happen. I was like, yeah, but I knew we were going to be safe. I knew that's the ride. The ride is to make you scared. In fact, I feel they turned the lights off in there and it's dark in there to make it more frightening because the ride wasn't actually that scary. So, of course, turning the light off is like now it's in the unknown and you don't know, you can feel if you're up or down, you still, feel the physical experience, but now you don't know what's next. Is there a big drop? Is there a big, twist? Of course, and that's what makes it really, really scary. But my son was like amazed, and my daughter like, well, I don't know, why weren't you scared? I was just like, because I know it's going to be okay, because that's what the ride is about. At the end of the day, that's people, hundreds and thousands of people go on this ride, and it's there to scare you. And that's what made it so fun, that you don't know what the next twist is and you can't tell what's going on. And we got to do that as a family, and that was awesome. And that's the twists and turns in life. Now, the thing is, my son doesn't know he's going to be okay. My daughter doesn't know. They're frightening, and I think we scarred them. But we had to really sit down as a family and talk about that experience. And that's the difference. That's another reference point I'm trying to give to you, is that some people freak out and they have no emotional intelligence whatsoever when their world is twisting and turning. And that is purely because they have no space. I mean, if you look at COVID and what happened during the pandemic, the first thing that I did was start getting onto social media and encouraging people that it's okay and we can get through this. And I had lots of clients that I was working with during that time, paying clients and, also people who are listening to me on social media. And, the biggest thing, like a lot of my paying clients said, I don't think I would have got through the way I got through that without you. And, and I mean, the biggest thing that I did for my clients is lend them my certainty, because I was like, yeah, like the world is falling apart. It looks like, there was so much level of uncertainty, but I knew it was going to be okay. It's okay. And now where does that come from? Space. Your space that you have. And I personally felt like I lend my certainty to people who became uncertain. And they got through it with me. And, obviously, it was a terrible time. There was people who committed suicide. There was people who died from COVID. There was people who lost their businesses. Families fell apart. So much took place in that part of our world and that part of our lives. But the difference between the people who got through it and the people who didn't, unfortunately, mentally, I'm talking about here, is a space. It's how much space do you have?
And, and look, you can't measure. It's not a measurable thing. How much space do you have? It's like how big is your bank account balance? How much space do you have in reserves? It's not like that. It's just, it's your ability to stay connected to yourself despite the noises that are taking place outside of you. The world is falling apart, or there's twist and turn in your life at the moment. It's your ability to then stay connected. In other words, listen to the silence instead of being distracted by the noises, being distracted by the world. So, and again, look, guys, we're doing this work. You're doing this work. It's called self-realization. That's what the work is all about. And it's about you realizing yourself, realizing your real self. And the only way you can realize your real self is how? Is by realizing it for yourself. This is the thing about self-realization. You're realizing the real self, but the only person who can realize the real self is you. You must self-realize for yourself. And that's what the work is. And as you continue to expand your awareness, and again, I'll remind you again, you're expanding your awareness of your expandedness, because who you truly are, who you really are, the real self is already expanded. It's not expanding. No, your awareness, your consciousness, if you like, is becoming expanded of the expandedness. And I sometimes refer to this as the rubber band effect. I've shared this in many of my other teachings. And doing this work is like a rubber band, and your consciousness or your awareness, if you like, it's probably the best way to put it here. That's more neutral. Your awareness is like the rubber band. Every time you're doing the work on yourself, every time you're going beyond yourself, meaning you're getting outside of your comfort zone, or you're getting into the uncertain. Because your brain is conditioned to find the path that is keeping it more certain. Like it's looking for certainty in the story. But every time that you get outside your comfort zone and get to the unknown, the more you go to the unknown, the more that you take yourself into the uncertain times, and don't run away from it. Don't, because if you sit in the uncertain, you start to become comfortable. There is a discomfort that takes place when you go to the uncertain. There's a discomfort that takes place when you go to the unknown. But if you rather than revert back to get back into your box, into your reality, or into your matrix, if you like, and try to find certainty from your matrix or your story, if you can just sit for a little while longer there, it starts to become familiar. That feeling of uncertainty, you start to find comfort in the discomfort. That right there is you expanding your awareness. And every time you expand your awareness, the rubber band expands. But ultimately what happens, because it's an elastic band, our mind is similar. It goes back to where it was. And then you have another moment where you have some other discomfort. And maybe this is a discomfort around emotions that you felt. You've stored emotions, past memories. And again, you go into that discomfort and it's like the rubber band expanding. But it goes back. For those who do ice baths, or maybe you might give yourself a go of this. If you haven't done an ice bath, the first time you go in an ice bath, you go in there, and I remember my first time, I did a 3-minute ice bath. I think it was 6 degrees, and I went in there, and there is major discomfort. I personally back then didn't like cold weather or cold cold temperatures. I like, I live in Bondi Beach. It tells you I usually like the warm weather. So anyway, so it was such a discomfort. I mean, physically, your body is screaming to get out of there. And then mentally, there is this major discomfort. And of course, what you want to do is just sit there and breathe and just breathe. And it's just your body wants to react, and the reaction is to jump out, but it's to catch yourself. And instead of react, respond with the breath and find yourself in that discomfort and find comfort in the discomfort. So again, that for those who do ice baths, you'll relate to what I'm talking about. And if you haven't done an ice bath, you should do one so you know what I'm talking about here. And what happens there is that the second time you do the ice bath, the third time, the fourth, you start to become, it's not like the water gets warmer. Every time you get in, it's 6 degrees or 3 degrees or whatever it is that you're used to doing your temperature, right? Whatever temperature you use. Every time it's cold every time, but what happens is you start to the feeling of the discomfort becomes familiar to you, and as it becomes familiar to you, you start to find comfort in the discomfort, and right there is you expanding your awareness. So, I'm giving you a reference point of something very physical there, but it's the same with an emotion. So every time you get outside of your comfort zone, what was a discomfort or what was a moment where something was uncomfortable for you, it becomes comfortable, or it becomes familiar anyway. So you're no longer, oh my God, I can't. So in other words, it's no longer outside of your comfort zone. It used to be, I used to, get up there on stage, and that used to be a huge thing, and they used to be outside of your comfort. I'm just giving you a reference point here. It wasn't my personal experience, but you maybe it was, to get up on public, you get up on stage or ask someone out, or, propose a business plan or pitch a sale, whatever it is. It used to be a discomfort. It used to be outside of your comfort zone. But if you do it often enough, it becomes familiar. And now that is no longer being outside of your comfort zone. You're actually quite comfortable there. What's happened there? You've expanded. You've expanded. So the rubber band, and this is the thing with the rubber band never comes back to where it was, although at first perception, our first interpretation of it is it came back to where it was. It hasn't. Because every time you expand the rubber band, as it comes back to what looks like it was there, but it's no longer the same place. Why? Because the rubber band is losing its elasticity. Well, the prison of your own mind, if you like, is losing and is breaking. It's losing its power, right? As you expand your awareness, you expand your power. So this happens. This is the journey. This is the work of self-realization. You keep going out into the discomfort. And look, you don't need to necessarily go and find something to get uncomfortable about, because life does that really, really well for you. And sometimes it throws something at you and that you think, oh, I can't handle this. Well, trust me, you can. Because life would never throw something at you that you didn't have the capabilities or the space to be able to process. Okay? And the same goes with opportunities. Life would never throw an opportunity to you that you didn't have the capacity, the space to be able to take on that opportunity and make it yours. Okay, so it's the same. You need to trust that process. So life will throw things at you that will take you outside of your comfort zone, that will make you feel a major discomfort, that will make you look at the story and you find this huge level of uncertainty about the story. It's doing it on purpose so you can find the certainty in yourself. Okay, so, and again, how do you do that? Well, you find certainty in the uncertain. You find your knowing in the unknown. So, but sure, hey, go have an ice bath so you know what I'm talking about. Or next time you have an ice bath, just notice, oh yeah, you know what? It's still cold, but I've actually noticed that I've grown my capacity to sit here longer, or I've grown my
physically, I'm not jumping out. I'm actually quite comfortable. Yeah, you expanded. Your awareness. You expanded your physical capacity to sit in the cold, or your ability to find your comfort in your discomfort. That's what you've done. So this rubber band continues, and you continue this journey. And as you continue the journey, ultimately what happens is the rubber band begins to fray. And over time, as you keep going back into your uncomfortable, and every time now you're noticing that because the rubber band is losing its elasticity, you're actually expanding it much further. And as you're expanding it much further, it's now really losing its elasticity. Because before you only stretched it so much, now you're really doing things that, you were so uncomfortable, 2 years ago or 20 years ago. And it's just second nature. It's just become a natural capacity for you to go right out there. But ultimately, the journey is all about, my favorite quote from Rumi, as I mentioned before, is that we're not the drop in the ocean. We are the entire ocean in the drop. And the journey is ultimately about you becoming the ocean. What is the ocean? It's the greatest version of yourself. It is an infinite version of yourself. It is your capacity, your capability to become an infinite being in a finite world. What does that mean, being an infinite being in a finite world? You're still living in the finite world as a physical, limited being in time and space. You were born and you will die. But while you're here, your capacity is infinite. Okay? And you are no longer limited to just being the identity, the part of you that was born and part of you that dies. So you don't really die either, So it's that's what that quote is. It's you're not the drop in the ocean. You're the entire ocean in the drop. That is exactly what I refer to as you're an infinite being in a finite world. You're not a finite being in an infinite world. You're actually an infinite being in a finite world, but there is a process that needs to take place. A mind needs to break open. It needs to expand. It needs to topple. It's like if to me, I'll refer to the topple in more of the sessions coming up, but it's a topple that needs to take place, and suddenly your view and your experience of who you are is infinite. It's you're not limited to just your capacity as the drop. The drop can't move the ocean, but the ocean is moving the drops. So ultimately, this work, as you continue to take yourself there, wherever there is for you, I can just tell you it's not in your comfort zone. I can tell you it's not finding certainty or confidence from the story. From your bank balance, or from, this person says they love you, or, if someone says they love you, there'll be someone that says they hate you. If your bank balance is, making you feel comfortable, there will be a story just around the corner, or at the same time, you just haven't seen it, that is threatening your bank balance. That's the story, and until you realize yourself, self-realize, and that rubber band ultimately gets stretched often enough, and you let yourself feel that discomfort, feel the certainty, or at least feel the uncertain. Let yourself feel that, because some people go, I'm not feeling the certainty, but just sit there for a bit. Stop running away from the uncertain. Just let yourself feel it. Let yourself feel it. Don't run away. That's the first step. But ultimately, that becomes comfortable, and ultimately, the rubber band's beginning to lose its elasticity. It's now starting to fray, and then it just needs one big push, and rubber band is snapped. And you're no longer going back to where you thought you were. It's a complete different mind shift. Infinity is a state of mind. Love is a state of mind. And every single one of us have the same capabilities, the same capacity. But it's just not every single one of us are using that. Because not every single one of us are willing to get uncomfortable. not every single one of us are willing to find a certainty within themselves, to find their certainty in the uncertain, to find and trust and become the knowing in the unknown. So a little bit of a deeper conversation. My intention was to keep it simple as much as I can. But that's what this work is about. And that's what space is. You know, space is your capacity. Space is the moment. Space is love. Space is infinity. And it's always there, and it's always been infinite. It's just some people's rubber band are really straight. Some people look after their rubber band. Like if they stretched it, they'll come back and, you know, polish it or oil it or something to make sure it doesn't lose its elasticity. Like I need this rubber band to keep things as they are. But for transformation to take place, something's got to die in order for something to be born. That's the whole point of the transformation. The caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. Something has to die in order for the caterpillar to become a butterfly. Who dies? Well, the caterpillar. The caterpillar dies. So in our case, who dies? Your identity, your ego. And it's, again, and I say that, and you know, we haven't done a module on ego yet, and that's on purpose, and I might do one later, but I will put this out here. It's not that the ego dies. For as long as you're living here in this physical experience, there will be an ego. It's that the ego's power it had over you dies. That's what happens. But something's got to die for something to be born. That's the key for transformation. And this is the work of transformation. All right, I'll let that sizzle and land for you guys. And no doubt I will remind you, probably worth re-listening or re-watching this a second time. And I'll see what next comes up next week. So I'll see you guys next week. Bye for now. Hey guys, well done. You've just completed this video. How do you feel? I'm just here just to remind you that in order for me to continue to support you, it's important for you to continue to support this work. Please like this video and also press subscribe, and remember to press the bell icon as well so you get notified every single time I release a video. I'm going to be releasing so much content here that's going to support you. If you're looking for something even more, like you're looking for a community to be part of, some extra support, some extra coaching, you're looking to share your journey with other people, then go ahead and visit my website at amirzoghi.com, and there'll be some information there on how you can be more involved. Also, I read all the comments. I'd love to hear your experience. I want to release these videos for you. I want to support you. I love to see how it's landing for you. What's your experience of the videos? Do you have any questions? So remember to comment below, and I'll be responding to those messages as well. Thanks, guys. I'll see you on the next video.